what are some action steps that I could take to progress in the right direction?
You can get 80% good at any skill, like instantly. For the slow rate of learning guys, they need to learn how to increase their rate of learning because he's disciplined and he's steady and he keeps on going over 10 years. If someone sticks at something for 10 years, they will be good at it by the end of it. I always have high levels of intention to what my time is, and I use my calendar religiously. Hello, my name is Lachie Pior, co-founder at Veritas and Scale Smart. I'm Jake's teammate, and we work together to build cool shit and kick ass. In terms of like mannerisms and stuff, the way that I would describe it to provide like context of the bucket that you fall in, rather than just like, yeah, dude, you need to learn to add a bit more emotion to your text or whatever, is it comes down to that rate of learning stuff. So there's kind of like the 3 rates of learning. And I could talk for hours on this, but the high level version of it is you've got fast rate of learning. So that's you, and that is Lucas. So naturally, very intelligent people, you process information very quickly. You've got slow rate of learning people, and it's not a negative or a positive, like no one is better than other. They both have strengths and weaknesses naturally. Slow rate of learning people, this is more the bucket I definitely started in and I lean more towards, which is people who they don't pick things up as fast, they don't process information as quickly, but they have other positives. And usually the positive for one is the negative for the other. So think of it almost like the tortoise and the hare. So the high rate of learning people or fast rate of learning people is like the hare. You're really fast, you process information very quickly, but you bounce around all over the place and you're just a bit of a mess. And you find it very hard to sit down and focus on one thing and be very disciplined and focused for a long, consistent period of time. And so that is applicable in every facet of like how you actually function. So it's like in your mannerisms, it's in your actual actions, it's in your thinking, it's in your problem solving skills. It's often shows up in your relationships, and same thing with the slow rate of learning people. So for example, slow rate of learning people, and Lucas and I have been really good for each other on both sides. We've brought each other both closer to the middle. So I would say I'm now middle fast. So there's the people in the middle, and you're typically either middle slow or middle fast, which means you have more similarities with either side, right? So when I first started off, and there's still to this day, to a certain degree, I like to sit down and work on one project for hours at a time. I hate getting Slack messages flying in. I hate having 50 tabs open. I hate bouncing around between different projects because I feel it distracts me and I can get nothing done. But Lucas loves living in that chaos, and people who are typically very high functioning like living in that chaos, but they actually find it hard to do the opposite, and we both cap out in different ways. So in regards to specifically like mannerisms, people who are high rate of learning often have very low like professionalism. And the reason why is you've never had to develop it. So high rate of learning people, the way that Lucas and I describe it is like you can get 80% good at any skill like instantly. Like you come in and you instantly get to 80% level of competency and goodness. You look around at everyone else and you just wonder why everyone's struggling to pick things up, because it just seems so obvious to you because you've just got like that genetic natural intelligence. And what typically happens is you hit that 80% bar, and then you have to make up that extra 20%, you have to do all the slow rate of learning shit. And you've typically never developed the skill set in your life. And you can typically, you get like false positive feedback loops from your environment because you can run around and you can beat everybody else and you're often the smartest person in the room purely based on that 80% genetic advantage. But what happens is, and because these people are just rare, if you run into someone else who's also high rate of learning, but they've developed all the other mannerisms and let's call it the pros of the slow rate of learners, they will annihilate you. If you want to become the best version, like the Jake 2.0, you need to be able to work on those things because there's downsides to it. So for example, high rate of learning people or fast rate of learning people, they're typically pretty sloppy in regards to like their professionalism. Like I told you, first day on the job, like often people who are high rate of learning in a company context, they will always roll out of bed 3.5 seconds before the Zoom meeting. They show up looking like they just woke up. Their hair isn't done. Their fucking desk is a complete mess. They've got no idea what's going on today. They don't have an organized calendar or a to-do list. And they just show up, they like fucking crawl over to their desk and they just function and they just get by like that. And because that's always worked for you and you've always relied on your natural intelligence and ability, you've never had to not do that. And you're also very logical and very smart and can very easily justify the reason for why you do everything. Because if you said that to a high rate of learning person, it's typically like, well, why does it matter if I roll out of bed 3.5 seconds before the team meeting if I can get all my shit done for today in KPI? And that's a fair question. And if all you want to do is just get done what you need to get done and just hit KPI, then you can maybe do that. And that's fine. But if we're talking about becoming the best version of yourself, you need to adopt some of the other characteristics. Is this making sense so far? Do you want me to just keep rambling, or do you want me to pivot in a direction?
No. Just keep going. I'm following everything. Cool. And we've like talked about this before, so like I'm all over it.
Yeah.
But yeah, the more you tell me, the better.
Yeah, sweet. And so what I encourage the guys and the other sales team to do, and this is really hard. It's particularly hard for high rate of learning people, because high rate of learning people, there's typically like an inbuilt ego, not in like a malicious way, but because you are used to being the smartest person and you can very easily logically justify why you do everything and pick apart other people's thing. It's quite hard for you to take on, which is great because you're asking this question, right? It's quite hard for you to take on feedback from people who are slow rate of learners, because you look at them and you kind of like put yourself above them, like I'm better than them, and not in like an egotistical way, but because often you are more right. However, that will hold you back. And the benchmark I always use, because Lucas and I get frustrated at each other with different things, right? Like he gets frustrated at me because I'll work on one thing while there's 7 other things burning to the ground on fire, and he's like MIA for 6 hours to get that landing page done, right? And so we as any relationship does, we have like our things, right? And so essentially what I would recommend, and what the thing I say to him, because I will pick him up on things and he's smart enough to justify why he's doing it. The crunch line, or the punchline, sorry, for anyone who's high rate of learning to check yourself is, has reality given you the feedback that you're smart enough? Right? Because you can always justify how smart you are and why you do things, but do you have what you want? Are you actually getting the outcome in reality? And if the answer to that is no, it doesn't matter how smart you think that you are in some way, shape, or form. So if you don't have what you want, even if you can make a perfectly logical argument, it's not good enough. And that's the thing that I come to with Lucas, and then he comes to other things with me in regards to like me being super slow and all that kind of stuff, right? So for the slow rate of learning guys, I tell them they need to learn how to increase their rate of learning from the fast rate of learning guys. Like I'll give them a piece of feedback, they won't implement it, and I have to slap them up and be like, dude, I've given you this feedback 3 times. The way that you're learning, taking notes, and implementing clearly isn't good enough, despite how many hours you put in. And the high rate of learning guys, they'll understand something, but they're just sloppy and chaotic and their professionalism sucks. I have to slap them around. I have to say, look at the slow rate of learning guys. It's common sense for them to use a calendar. It's common sense for them to show up and be ready for the meeting 20 minutes before the meeting with a pen and a pad, knowing what they need to do after it, coming prepared with questions. Because us slow rate of learning guys, that's how we've had to get good. Like I didn't have that genetic fast thing. So for me to get to where I am, I had to do it through discipline, focus, hard work. A really big one's over preparation. Like another classic key sign of high rate of learning is you've never really had to study very hard. Like you can show up, fucking hit the textbook for an hour the night beforehand, you get like a B+, right?
Yeah.
And is that you?
That's me.
Yeah. What does your study routine look like?
Like literally the night before, like an hour before bed. Fuck, this is enough, and then I go to sleep. And then I'll get like a B+, like maybe an A. Like I'll always hit like an 80, like 70 to 80 range, but I'd never get like 90+. Yeah,
well, there you go, right? So, and that's good. And you look at everyone else, you're like, geez, why are they studying so hard to get like a 75%? Like, it's just hard for you to wrap your head around it. They have the same thing, but they, for them, it's like the work ethic, it's the focus, it's the discipline. And the paradox about this is you're genetically hardwired to not be able to do the other thing. It's not even just like it's a weakness. It's like because you're so strong at one, you're like like additionally negative at the other. It's not, it's like everyone's on a spectrum of this, right? It's not like you are one or the other. It's just a shade of gray. But I actually think for the fast rate of learning people, they have the highest ceiling in terms of potential. So if you are really fast rate of learning, you have the highest potential out of everyone. However, I actually think it's genetically hardest for you to achieve your high rate of learning. Yeah, if you're all the way right at the bottom of slow rate of learning, it's pretty hard as well. However, I think you have a higher chance of doing it because the slow rate of learning people almost have to develop better like human characteristics. It's like they're better people morally, but they have to develop better characteristics that serve them better over the long haul. Like the tortoise, for example, even though he's a slow learner, because he's disciplined and he's steady and he keeps on going over 10 years, it doesn't matter how dumb or slow rate of learning that person is. If someone sticks at something for 10 years, they will be good at it by the end of it. But the fast rate of learners, what happens for you guys is you just max out at 80%, then you get bored and you run into the tedious, boring grind work that not because you're in a negative way, but you almost feel is a bit beneath you, like it's the boring shit, and you want to be like bouncing around, running 100 miles an hour. It's like high rate of learning people really struggle reading basic books, right? Because it's not dense enough, and you feel like you already know what the book is going to say after you've read the first chapter and you get bored of it, you put it down. However, there's a very large element of that's where all the progress is. That's where all the potential that you've never achieved is. And it's the same as vice versa for the slow rate of learning people.
I would say that I agree with a lot of what you said, but in my particular case, I don't think the ego thing applies to me as such. But instead, like I still have the same problem, but the reason behind the problem is just different. Like instead of thinking that like I'm above it, so therefore I won't do it, I just feel like it's just so boring that I don't want to do it. Right? Like that's my problem. So like the outcome is still the same. It just doesn't get done, but it's just like, like I have to do this. It's just so boring. Right. So yeah, no, I completely understand. Regarding, I guess, me specifically, I'd love for you to kind of dig more into the roasting side of things. And
okay, you specifically?
Like, yeah. If you could, because
sure.
Then it's more applicable directly to, I guess, the business and progressing myself as well, right?
Yeah. Your natural like rate of learning and your sales skills and stuff, that's going to be fine. High rate of learning, people, they typically are very bad at working in teams and no one on the team wants to work with them. And they're often not really suited towards a job. Like I would say, even for yourself, you're almost not even really suited for like a normal job, right? And you probably feel that way in a lot of companies. I know Lucas certainly felt that way. Often you have like authority complexes, not in like you think you're top G or anything, but like you don't like authority. You really struggle with authority. Lucas has had that as well. And so in regards to you specifically in the company, there's the basic stuff that I would say is a mandatory standard that everyone has to hold the bar to. And if you're not holding the bar to that, it doesn't matter how good you are. I think disrespectful is a strong word, but I would just describe it as it's below the standard of the company culture. So for example, things like showing up on time. And that's just unfortunate for everyone on our team because that's just a pet peeve of mine. I don't think that there's literally any excuse to ever not show up to a team meeting on time, even if it's a minute late. You should be prepared 15 minutes before the team meeting. And if you're not prepared 15 minutes before the team meeting, a message should be sent to the person who's running the meeting saying, hey, I'm behind 15 minutes for XYZ reason. I'm really sorry. I'll be there as fast as I can. It's like rolling out and showing up 2 minutes late. That's inexcusable because the standard for showing up at 9 a.m. is held to everyone on the team. So when you don't hold to that standard, it makes people think that you think, even though I know that's not the case, you're better than them, and it's just below the standard. So I'd say that like there's simple stuff like punctuality. I would say that there's additional stuff like levels of effort that you put in and like professionalism. So for example, when you showed up wearing an hoodie to like the second meeting that we had, I'm chill.
I think it was the first one, actually.
That was the first one. You're right. Yeah. So it's like I'm chill and like I've got no issues with that, and it's a work from home job. But to show up wearing an Udi there's a level of unprofessionalism there that shows me that you have a low level of either social awareness, or if you are socially aware enough to know that that's going to be considered unprofessional, then you just don't care. And either of those answers isn't good enough.
Sure. Can I butt in there?
Please. Yeah, go for it.
I was talking about this with Lucas again today, right?
Yeah.
And it was actually one of my questions, and except I described it as tact rather than something else because it appears in other areas of my life, like with my mom and my girlfriend, right?
Yep.
For example, over the weekend, I went down to Bunbury, which is like a 2-hour drive. We had a weekend away, and because I had a volleyball tournament, right?
Yep.
And so we're staying at this Airbnb, and my girlfriend was like, "Oh, hey Jake, can you call up this restaurant and see if the kitchen's still open because we might be too late?" So I call them up, and she's like right next to me. The lady picks up. She's like, "Oh, hello, this is blah blah blah." I was like, "Hey, is the kitchen open?" And she's like, "Yeah, the kitchen's open. Do you want to order something?" I was like, "Ah, no, I'm good, thanks, bye." And then like I ended on the phone, right? And my girlfriend was like, "Why are you so rude to that poor chick?" I was like, "What do you mean?" I was just, I asked if the kitchen was open. That was it. Right. Yeah. And she's like, "You could have done it like so much nicer." And I was like, "But why?"
Yeah.
So I think the conclusion that I came to with Lucas was not that, well, yes, it's a bit of, social awareness, I guess you could say. Like I don't have the social awareness, but it's also more specifically, I take actions without thinking of the way that those actions will be perceived, right? So, for example, if I look back on the action, right? If you were like, hey, like if say we had the call, I was wearing an hoodie, right? And then you were like, hey, how do you think this makes like how you perceived because of this action that you've taken? I was like, oh, yeah, like I get it, right? Like you don't have to say anything, but it's just like the thought of how it makes me perceived is not there until either after or like the action has already been taken. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes perfect sense. And I'd say that happens because you've never been in an environment that's forced you to develop the skill of having that like trigger, right? Like, oh, I'm getting on a meeting with a new employer. That should be like a trigger that says, let me show up looking my best and present my best self. Kind of like a job interview. You know what I mean? Like when you go into a job interview, you know, you got to fucking iron up the shirt and do your hair and all that sort of shit. You haven't haven't developed that skill to another level. And that's cool because it is a skill, right? It is something that you can develop and you can learn. And it's typically because you've never been in an environment that's required that. Because before this, you were doing your own thing. So it didn't matter. You didn't have all these like additional considerations that you had to make. So you don't have those triggers. But through asking amazing questions like this, you will develop those.
How do you feel like, this is probably more of a Lucas question, but I feel like it's also applicable to asking you as well because you've taken like a different route to get to the same position. How do you feel like, what are some action steps that I could take to progress in the right direction? Because like, obviously I'm having this talk with you because I am looking to progress and upskill that way. Right. But at the same time, it's like, and I still haven't watched the MOI video. So if the answer's in that, then I'll get to it. Right?
Not quite. That's more sales specific.
Okay. And the pain video, like digging out the pain.
The identity shift one.
That one. Yeah. So I haven't watched that. I've been binging other LMS videos. But what action steps can I take to progress and potentially learn and get better in those types of environments? And Lucas was telling me that he has like a couple different little tricks that he uses, but as I was mentioning before, that you are kind of his pillar of, what did I say? I said you're
I reality check him.
Reality check him. Yeah. And without that, I asked him, I was like, okay, well, I don't have my own Lachie. So, and the problem that I face in my personal life is the fact that my life is too comfortable, right? And I think Lucas related to this as well. It's like I haven't watched your YouTube video, something else that I need to watch as well. But you've had a difficult life, and it's like a bit of a sob story that provides character to yourself and benefits in your business development life as well, right? But when Lucas said, it's like, apparently he came to you and it's like, I can't make a story like this because I don't have anything, right? Like, I don't know what to do.
He's had a different story for sure.
Right? And like in my life, my parents are lovely. They're still together, right? That nobody's died in my life.
Damn it.
Right? It's like, grandma just died. Right? Like nobody's died in my life. You know, like middle class, we're never poor. So
you haven't had the trauma to balance it out.
Exactly. And so what I'm trying to do is trying to dig up as much pain as possible to be able to provide myself with a reality change, right? But at the same time, it's like, you know what I mean?
No, I do know exactly what you mean, because the answer is in that personal breakthroughs and identity shifts video I did, the long one in LMS. But to touch on it here, the way that I help prospects change and on sales calls is the same way I've done it for myself continuously. And so I'm a big believer that it doesn't matter like how sexy the goals that you set are, how many vision boards you put together, you won't change until you reach a threshold of pain in your current scenario that forces you to change and change your identity. I think about it as, if I want a new outcome in life, I have to change my existing identity. And a more, let's say, specific way to say identity is standards. So what are my current standards? And so we can talk about all the tactics in the world, but if you don't genuinely believe that your current standards are going to lead you to a painful conclusion in life, then you just won't change. And you'll sit down and you'll write out, there's the classic example of this, the person who sits down, writes out a health and fitness plan, a meal plan, a diet plan, and they do nothing with it the next day. So I would say the first thing is, and this is often, I know you don't have this because you're humble enough to be asking these questions, which is awesome. For most fast rate of learning people, they need to come to that conviction first of all, which is usually a big thing for people who are very intelligent, to come to the conviction that my intelligence is going to be the thing that holds me back from achieving all my goals. It's like a mind fuck. So the fact that you're already there and asking that question is really good. So the second thing, the more tactical thing, is you need to sit down and you need to identify what are my current standards. And you can even do high rate of learning, slow rate of learning standards almost, and draw them out. Like, what are some standards I'm really happy of and I'm really proud of with my high rate of learning abilities? Like picking things up very fast, being able to identify problems in the business very fast and bring them to us. With someone who's a slow rate of learner, they may just mindlessly try and solve it with hours of YouTube videos, right? However, you need to identify the other stuff and write it out. What's my standard around professionalism? Really simple ones. Is everything in your calendar? Like my calendar, every single minute is blocked out of every day. I may not always function to it perfectly, but I always have high levels of intention to what my time is. And I use my calendar religiously. So if you don't have that, that's a low standard, in my opinion, for time management. And time management is often a skill that high rate of learning people have never had to develop, because they can get to 80% with zero time management. But your standards around your time management are super important. Other smaller things like showing up on time, how you manage your to-do list, right? So for example, right now you've got multiple types of leads you need to call, you've got admin you need to do. Do you wake up right now and just attack the day with a kind of a gist of what you want to happen? Or have you actually sat down and thought about, I've got 4 different variations of tasks that I need to be in different mental places for, and coordinated your day so that you can maximize the efficiency of your day, and then have you repeatedly stuck to that schedule and optimized it? It's unlikely you've done that, because most high rate of learning people never have to do that. They just show up and throw shit at the wall and it kind of works.
Have you thought about your YouTube plan?
We thought about the YouTube plan. I would say that I'm really excited. I've wanted to do YouTube for a very long time. I've wanted to create content for a very long time. Actually, when I was at my first agency job, or my only agency job, I started creating videos on copywriting, which are really funny to watch back. And yeah, obviously you always cringe when you watch back your old videos. But yeah, because When I was coming up, I didn't have any mentors. And I was just going on YouTube and listening to a bunch of videos. How do I make money as fast as possible on the internet? All those ones. And I was always chasing like tactics. And I never really had someone slap me across the head and say, hey, dude, you need to learn like a high value skill set. Like someone's going to pay you thousands of dollars on the internet because you actually have skills that make them even more thousands of dollars. So I'm really keen to get into content and create content for the younger version of myself because I think there's a lot of people out there who do have aspirations to get into a better spot in their life, but they don't have the mentors to be able to like give them the reality slap across the face and say, you just aren't good enough yet, and these are the skills you need to learn. And if you really want to get it, just learn those. And if you don't, well then keep trying the shortcuts, but they're never going to work. So I'm excited to create that content. Is that how you meant, or did you have a more specific question?
No, no, that's good. I was curious whether or not, or have you, or if you plan to do some sort of mentoring as well, because I feel like people in my position, or like a bit further along or a bit further behind, could have some sort of value provided by you in that sort of life. And I know that people in your position that then create content tend to do very well in the mentoring space because of the skill set that they have provided. Rather than B2B, it becomes B2C, right? Have you thought about doing something like that?
I've had a lot of people message me on Instagram asking for like mentorship sessions. The amount of just being candid, the amount of money someone would have to pay for a one-on-one mentorship session, it's usually too high in comparison to the value, the enterprise value I could generate from the company by investing that hour into the company. So I don't really do like one-on-one mentorship sessions. What I would say is I'd be super keen to do something like once we build up our social audience a bit more, do more like a live, like go like on Instagram live or like YouTube live for like an hour or something. That way, people who ask questions to me on the live, I can answer that and I can help thousands of people and it could be up there to be shared with thousands of people rather than just like someone pays me 5 grand or something for an hour of my time to do a one-on-one session where I could just put that time and get a way higher return in the business. So, but yeah, I'd love to do mentoring. It's very fulfilling. If I could do anything and not get paid for it, and I know that sounds contradictory to what I just said, that would be what I would do, which is why I do it for free, like on Instagram Live or something.